Hi, I'm Jennifer from jenniferleads.com. Today, we're going to discuss the components of a dyslexia assessment. First off, there may be many professionals who are qualified to assess your child for dyslexia. Typically, those professionals will have a master's degree or a doctorate degree in the fields of education, reading, school psychology, psychology, neuropsychology, or speech-language pathology. When you're looking for a professional, you want to make sure they're knowledgeable in both assessing and treating dyslexia, and they're up to date on the most current research. Before I start talking to you about the components of a dyslexia assessment, I think it's important to consider the definition of dyslexia, because that definition and those characteristics are what is going to drive our assessment. So the International Dyslexia Association has put out a definition, and this is what they say. Dyslexia is a specific learning disability that is neurobiological in origin. It is characterized by difficulties with accurate and/or fluent word recognition and by poor spelling and decoding abilities. These difficulties typically result from a deficit in the phonological component of language that is often unexpected in relation to other cognitive abilities, the provision of effective classroom instruction. Secondary consequences may include problems in reading comprehension and reduced reading experience that can impede growth of vocabulary and background knowledge. So when we consider that definition, of course, most professionals that you will seek are going to assess your child's both spelling abilities and their decoding abilities, because those are the characteristics of dyslexia. I think it's important to consider, however, when we assess those decoding abilities and spelling abilities, that we look at your child's ability to read non-words and spell non-words, and also familiar words that they've experienced before. That assessment would give us two different types of information. Their ability to spell and read words that they've already encountered tells us how well they're storing those words in their brain, and what kind of, we call them mental orthographic images, or mental graphemic representations. Basically just how well your child's storing those words in their brain and how well they can remember them. When we assess non-words, a child's ability to decode those and spell those, that is assessing your child's ability to use the rules that they've learned and to show us what they know about the language and the knowledge that they may have to help them to be able to spell and sound out words that they've never seen before. We also want to look at your child's ability to comprehend what they have read. So we want to look at that at two levels as well. We want to see whether your child can comprehend what has been read to them and also what they're reading on their own. If they cannot comprehend either way, then that's typically indicative of an underlying language difficulty or a memory difficulty. If they're understanding what somebody else reads to them, but not understanding what they read, then that usually will tell us that your child is spending so much time and effort trying to figure out the words that they don't have any cognitive space left to try and figure out what that passage is meaning or to apply meaning to the words they're reading. Dyslexia assessment should also look at your child's reading fluency. And reading fluency can be looked at the word level and also at the passage level. So when your child's reading a passage, does it sound like they sound when they're speaking? Their words should be put together and said in a manner that is using inflection and prosody, and that isn't just read in a kind of straight pattern where they don't have any expression in what they're reading. And finally, we should look at your child's writing when we do a dyslexia assessment. And in that, we want to make sure that your child is able to express their thoughts in a coherent manner, and they can get their ideas down on paper, and that they represent their true knowledge and their true abilities when they're putting those words and those ideas into words. The part of a dyslexia assessment that many professionals leave off is the part that I think is the most important. And if we assess these parts, then that's what tells us how well your child is doing at the foundational levels, what's going on inside of the brain, and what's actually leading to some of those spelling and those decoding difficulties. And those parts of the assessment are related to language. We are born with our brains set up, ready to learn language, ready to acquire language and pick up on the language of our environment. That is not how reading and spelling how they work for us though. We are not born with any specific part of our brain that is dedicated to just reading and just writing and just spelling. So when we are learning to read and to spell, we are actually overlaying that on top of the language part of our brain. And if we have a problem with those underlying language skills, or if we have a deficit in the language area, then that's also going to carry over to our reading and our writing. The specific areas of language that are related to reading and spelling and writing would be phonological awareness, phonological memory, and rapid automatic naming. I'll start first with phonological awareness. Phonological awareness is just our brain's ability to think about and manipulate the sounds of spoken language. So for instance, sound blending would be if I say the word s, e, n, t to your child, could they put those sounds together and tell me what word that is, that the word is sent? If they can't do that when we're just working with spoken language, then they're also going to struggle when they're trying to do that with written language. And for instance, that would be what they're doing when they're trying to decode words. So they might know that S says S, and E says E, and N says N, and T says T. But once we say those sounds, they may not be able to blend those sounds together and tell us what the whole word is. Another area of phonological awareness that is related to spelling would be segmentation. So if I give your child the whole word bland, could they tell me that the sounds in bland are B, L, A, N, D? And your child's ability to do that is related to their ability to spell. So again, if they can't do it when they hear it with just spoken language, then they're going to have the same struggles when they're trying to do it with written language, because that's adding another component on top of those foundational skills. We also look at your child's ability to manipulate the sounds of language. So for instance, if they know how to spell bland, if they can tell me the sounds in bland, B, L, A, N, D, can they also tell me what the word bland is without the L, band? And those skills are called elision, and those are some of the last skills that children who have dyslexia can acquire, and those are the skills that they really struggle with past the point of learning how to read. So they'll really struggle with being able to manipulate and think about the sounds within words and take out a sound and be able to recognize what that word still is. The next area of the language portion of dyslexia assessment would be phonological memory. And phonological memory is just basically your memory for what you hear, memory for sounds. And when a child struggles with phonological memory, they will struggle with sounding out longer words. So for instance, they may start sounding out the sounds at the beginning of a word, but by the time they get to the end of the word, they've forgotten what they had read at the beginning. They also will struggle with understanding what they've read if they have a phonological memory deficit. So as they're reading, they're taking those visual symbols on the page and they're turning them in their head into sounds and sound representations and turning them into language. And we hold that and store that in our brain the same way that we would as the things that we hear. So as they're reading, it's like they're hearing that in their head, and if they struggle with remembering what they're hearing just in spoken language, they're also going to struggle with remembering what they're hearing in written language. So as they're reading, they might read the first sentence and then struggle to remember what that first sentence was by the time they get to the end of that page. And lastly, we want to look at rapid automatic naming. And that's your child's ability to see something or to have an idea and to be able to pull that idea and those words, link those ideas and concepts to sounds, and then get those sounds to come out of their mouth. So typically when we're assessing rapid automatic naming, we'll look at your child's ability to quickly and efficiently say numbers or letters or colors or familiar objects. And we just want to see how quickly your child can link to those words and get those words to come out of their mouth. And children who struggle with rapid automatic naming typically will have a difficult time when they're trying to read fluently. They can't get those words to come out of their mouth quickly enough to be able to understand what they're reading and to comprehend it. So those are the components of a dyslexia assessment, and all of those components are equally important. And at the end of your assessment, you should have an idea of what your child is struggling with, and you should be given accommodations and modifications that may help your child in the classroom, and given a plan or a pathway to lead to help your child to develop these skills. And again, I want to talk about really quickly, go back to those language areas, the phonological awareness, the phonological memory, and the rapid automatic naming. Those skills are, like I said, the underlying skills that lead to the development of reading and spelling, fluent reading and spelling skills. But we can assess those skills before a child ever even learns how to read or picks up their first book. So we can look at those skills. If a child is at risk for dyslexia, we can look at those skills prior to introduction to books and reading and help your child and figure out whether your child is at risk for dyslexia before those deficits start to appear in their school and their academic work. Your assessment when you're finished should give you an idea of how your child is functioning on the big 5 reading components. And when I say the big 5, those would be phonological awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. Your assessment will give you an idea how your child is doing with all 5 of those important skills for reading, and it should give you an idea of where you could go from there. What can you do to improve those skills and help your child? Your assessment should give you an understanding of your child's challenges and how you can help to remediate those challenges, or how you can help to teach your child to compensate for those areas of struggle. You should leave your assessment feeling empowered and understanding your child and feel like you know exactly where you should go from there. So at the end of this video, I've attached this. It's a fact sheet from the International Dyslexia Association, and it's just called Dyslexia Assessment, What It Is and How Can I Help? And it gives the basic details that I just gave you, and it talks about the different areas that should be assessed for your child who has dyslexia when they do have that dyslexia assessment. And I will attach this in the comments section below the video, and I'll also put it up on my webpage. So good luck with your assessment, and I hope you get all the information you need, and at the end of that assessment, you leave feeling like you truly understand your child and understand what you can do to help. Thanks for joining me today, and next time I'll be demonstrating some therapy ideas and techniques for improving phonological awareness. Like I said, that's the building blocks. Those are the language skills that are necessary for developing fluent reading and spelling skills. So those are the underlying skills that if your child has those skills, will help lead into successful reading and spelling. And we want to develop those skills to make it more easy on your child when they are attempting to learn how to read and spell. So next time I will be providing some therapy techniques and showing you how you can enhance your child's phonological awareness. Thanks for joining me today.